Hey everyone, today I'm trying to continue my series of trying to get through my back catalogue of games that I need to review. Today I'm talking about 10 family weight games, so these are games with pretty family friendly themes on them, easy rules that are kind of under a certain weight threshold that children can understand. So I'm not going to go into tremendous detail on them, but I'll go kind of give my thoughts and general kind of impression of the game. So let's start off by talking about Kingdom Builder. So Kingdom Builder probably came out about a decade ago now, and this one I suppose got a bit more coverage because it was designed by Donald X. Vaccarino, who was very famous for designing Dominion, which was one of the pioneering deck building games that had tremendous success. This one is pretty simple, as you have these 4 different kind of quadrants of boards, and all those boards have loads of hexes on them with different terrain types. And the idea is you're trying to get points in lots of different ways. So your turn is going to consist of drawing a card from this face down stack, and that card is going to have a certain terrain type on it. So the terrain could be things such as, the swampland or the mountains or the water or the fields. And every time you draw one of these cards, you're going to place 2 of your buildings on that certain type of terrain. And that's what your turn is going to consist of. And every game, or from game to game, there's going to be a number of different scoring criteria. So, for example, there's going to be cards that say you're going to score a point for every house or every building in your longest horizontal row, or you're going to score a point for every building next to a mountain or next to a river, or your biggest cluster of houses. So you've got all these different scoring criteria that you can change from game to game, which adds a bit of variability there. But every time you draw a card, you're going to have to, if you can, you're going to have to build off an existing area you've already placed in. And that's going to be pretty much the flow of the game. There are additional wrinkles to the game, such as, if you get additional points for surrounding one of the, I think there's the citadels, and there's a bit of manipulation in terms of these tokens you can win and use. But ultimately, that's what it is. You're just trying to get as many points as you can from the public objectives. For me, this was a game that it kind of struggled to get out of that second or third gear. It didn't really ramp up for me. I found the card drawing a bit restrictive because sometimes you draw cards that you can't really do much with, and they're pretty much throwaway options. But being a family weight game, that might work in some people's favour because it doesn't overwhelm you with choices. You are limited or restricted to placing in certain areas. It's all about a game trying to be as optimal as you can with your placements, trying to maybe fulfill certain objectives or maybe a number of objectives with particular placements, and trying to get as many points as you can as quickly as you can with as few placements as you can. So I liked it. It was pleasant, but certainly didn't inspire me. It was a bit mediocre, and I think there are a number of different games that do this kind of variable objectives a bit better than Kingdom Builder does, such as maybe Cartographers or Isle of Skye, but it was okay. The next one I'm going to talk about is Fabled Fruit, which is an interesting concept. This one is a freedom and freeze game. It's a worker placement game, but the worker placement spots are cards. And the idea is you're trying to get these points, or as many points as you can, by trying to cash in these different fruits in order to get these contracts, really, or to pay for these contracts. And basically, you're going to have a player piece, and you're going to activate one of these spots made up of this deck of cards to collect fruit in lots of different ways. So it might say, trade in this fruit to get 2 of these fruit, or from the market take this amount, and there's just loads of different ways to accumulate fruit. And the interesting thing about this is that when you start trying to cash in these fruit to get the points, then you do that by going to the worker placement spots as well, which means that every time you take these points, that deck is getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and will eventually run out, meaning that nobody can go there anymore. And then you reveal a new worker placement spot with a new set of cards into the gameplay. I love that concept. I like the idea of almost like a campaign, or almost like a kind of a legacy feel to it, where the game is constantly evolving and in flux. But ultimately, I found that a lot of the cards were very similar, just slightly tweaked on the other ones, and just didn't really offer many new options or interesting options to go down. But I think for a family weight game, it works well. I think maybe once you've played through the whole sequence of cards, then there's not really much incentive to go back to it. But I understand that they wanted to strike a balance of being accessible while still having that kind of innovative idea into it. But as a kind of a heavier weight gamer, it didn't really do it for me. It just felt a bit mediocre again. So that is Fabled Fruits. Next game I'm talking about is Colt Express. So Colt Express was a Spiel des Jahres winner actually from a few years ago. This one is an action programming game with this amazing table presence because the board itself is this 3D train, and you have a player piece in that train, like a little outlaw. And the idea is you're trying to travel around this train, shoot other players, pick up loot or kind of steal loot off other players, and at the end of the game, whoever's got the most loot is going to be the winner. But the way this game plays is interesting because you have a hand of cards, and those cards dictate the different actions you can take. So such as moving, as I said, going up and down on the train onto the roof or not, shooting your guns. But the cards are played in a way, in sequence with the other players, in either face up or face down fashion. And ultimately, once all those cards are revealed, then you're going to play them out in sequence, and everything is going to be resolved in that order. But because some of the information is hidden, then you don't quite know what other players are doing, and you try to plan things meticulously, but inevitably it's going to go awry, and you're going to end up doing something you really didn't want to do, get punched and have your loot stolen off you. It's quite a chaotic game, but it comes together well. It's fun. Often you try to plan things meticulously and it doesn't go the way you want it to go, but that's all part of the fun of the game. And I think the theme implementation is done well. You get points for using all your bullets, you get points for stealing the briefcases, you've got to evade the outlaw and stuff. Also evade the marshal who's travelling up and down the train. A real good family weight game that is a lot of fun, and for kind of maybe that 4 to 6 player mark, I think this one is a real good option to introduce to your game group. So next up I have Camel Up, which is a game that I've spoken highly of in the past. I think it's a real nice game, and I think another Spiel des Jahres winner actually. This one is a betting game, as you are betting on these camels, on who's going to not only win a leg of the race, but who's going to win the ultimate race as well. And these camels are constantly moving and kind of stacking on each other, because it has this real cool mechanism where if a camel lands on another camel, then if the one below it moves, it's going to carry the one on top of it as well. So you've got a lot of variables to consider, and the way these camels move is based on this on dice rolls really. As you have this pyramid contraption, you shake it and you reveal the next die that's going to come out, which moves a certain camel. And you are picking up these bets on who's going to win the leg and who's going to come second. You can tinker with things such as making camels slip up or push them forward, and it really is a game about weighing up the probabilities and the odds and who's going to be likely to win the leg based on what's available to you at any time. Very tactical, but you can kind of take a bit of a punt and hope who's gonna win the ultimate leg for big rewards. A lot of fun, quick, engaging turns, and for a 20-minute game, it actually works extremely well. And I think it's probably one of the best family weight games out there. I have played this game a lot over the years, and I think I'm at a point now that I don't really want to go back to it, but still stood up way stronger than a lot of other games of this weight category, and certainly a game you can introduce to bigger game groups, a game you can sit back and just enjoy the race. That is Camel Up. Next up I have Takanoko, which is a gorgeous looking game. This one you are trying to maintain this garden, this kind of oriental garden with all these different bamboo shoots, and you are going to score points on 3 different objectives. So first up is going to be a kind of a gardener's objective where you want to grow the bamboo to certain levels. So you've got, I think it's 3 different colours of bamboo, and you might draw an objective card that says, you score X amount of points for having all the bamboo, all the pink bamboo at say a level 3, or things like that. Also at the same time, you've got a panda bear who's travelling around the garden and gobbling up the bamboo, and you're going to score points based on how much what different types of bamboo that the panda is eating. And alternatively, you are adding tiles to the board because you've got these big, I think they're hexes, and trying to create different formations of garden in order to score points that way. And it really is a game about trying to manipulate the board state in order to score your objective cards. And as the game develops and the map expands, you're growing more and more bamboo, but you also have to irrigate that land as well, because if you haven't got water flowing to that land, then the bamboo isn't going to grow. A real nice family game with some quite interesting decisions. There are different ways to score, different strategies to go down, but ultimately, while I think this is a really well executed game, I think I have a slight problem with the way that the game scores. I don't think it's completely balanced. I think the Panda is a slightly better way of getting points. It seems like a minimal effort way of getting points. So that's where it kind of falls down for me. But still, I think for a half an hour game, it works well, and people want to enjoy the visual aesthetic and table presence of this game. It just looks beautiful, it flows well, and it's a real cool, fresh theme as well. That is Takanoko. Next up, I have Imhotep. Imhotep is a game that's really fallen from grace for me. This one's by Phil Walker Harding, who is a designer, I think is an excellent designer. This one, you are trying to, well, you could do one of three very simple actions a turn. You're either going to be getting stone onto your player board, you're going to be loading a boat up with your stone, or you're going to be sending one of those boats off to one of four different scoring objectives. So one of those scoring objectives is going to be maybe building obelisks, so whoever's got the tallest obelisk, for example. One of them is going to be building pyramids, where every brick you place on the pyramid of your colour, you're going to score a number of points. One of them is going to be kind of have a coverage on this crypt, I suppose, and one of them is going to be getting objective cards. So as you can probably tell, the more you're loading these boats up, people are going to start manipulating the board to send you to islands that you don't want to go to, because they don't want to get you maximum benefit from loading up those boats. And these boats are all of different sizes, so you've got boats that maybe only can hold 1 stone, or ones that hold as much as 4 stone, and whenever you sail them to a certain scoring tile, then they're going to get kind of loaded off from the front of that boat, and they're going to resolve in that order. So you can kind of tailor your strategy to try and get the maximum from doing that, because certain spots score more points than others. But ultimately for me, while I love the boiled down mechanisms, one of 3 very simple decisions, not much, no bloat on this game really. But ultimately I found that the decision was taking too much out of your hands from turn to turn, and while people might like that, the idea of people constantly sailing your where your stones are away from where you want it to go, it becomes a bit frustrating, and it just becomes a bit of a game of just going through the motions and you're always knowing that you're never going to get to go where you want to go. You can try and mitigate that by keeping your options open by going in certain spots on the boats, but ultimately the decisions for me were taken too far out of your hand, and you were at the mercy of your opponents too much. So I started quite highly on this one, but the more and more I played it, the less I enjoyed it. Next up, I have Carcassonne, which, if you're watching this video, you're going to know what Carcassonne is. This is one of the iconic tile placement games, and the game, I suppose, that kicked off the meeple, the idea of the meeple. And you are going to be placing these tiles, trying to expand on castles or roads, and placing your pawns on them. And the bigger you make these castles and eventually close them, the more points you're going to get. The same applies to the roads. You can also lay the farmers down in order to score points based on how many enclosed castles they're touching. A real nice family weight game, and I think when I made my top 10 family weight games, this one came at top of that list, because I always recommend Carcassonne as an introduction to the hobby. Because I remember when I first got into the hobby and it was introduced Carcassonne, or when I played Carcassonne, I was just blown away. And that idea of building the board as you play was just a revelation to me, and I absolutely loved it. I still think it's a good game now. It does what it does extremely well. All the different expansions mean that you can tailor the gameplay to your needs. You can add those extra layers of complexity if you want to, or keep it ultra simple with just the base game. A real pleasant game, and one that I can't really fault really. Yes, you get points in lots and lots of different ways, and you are subject of the tile draw, because your opponent can constantly be getting the really juicy tiles while you get rubbish ones. But who cares? It's a nice, fast, family weight game that's so easy to play. It's got a certain charm about it, and I would always recommend it to new gamers. Next up, I have Mammut by Queen Games. Mammut is one of the most unique games I've played in terms of how you acquire things. So this one is a set collection game where you're trying to get points in different ways by having the most of things, or getting points for each thing, or not having the most, or not having the least of something, because you can lose points. But the way you actually collect these resources is interesting, because you take as many, or all the resources are placed in the middle of the table, then you can take as many of those resources as you want, taking them all if you want to. And then that's going to be your turn, and the next player is going to do the same thing, either choosing to take what's remaining, or take their choice of what's remaining left in the centre, or you can take all of somebody else's goodies that they've acquired, and take them in front of you and steal them off them, but taking one of the resources out and putting it back in the center of the table. So there's constant jostling or exchange of the resources as the game plays on, until eventually everybody's going to settle on what they're kind of content with, at least. And then a number of points are going to be divided out. But I love that key mechanism. I think it's completely unique, and I can't think of anything else that uses it. And while I would say that, yeah, this is kind of a one-trick pony style of game, but I think that one unique mechanism makes this game interesting and stand above your average set collection game. And yeah, I did enjoy it. While I do think, if you play this a certain amount of times, that novelty is going to wear off quickly. But for a number of players, you're going to enjoy it. And I think it's certainly worth checking out. And I would say it is a hidden gem as well. Definitely flown under the radar, and would certainly think that this would be more popular if more people knew about it. That is Mammoth by Queen Games. Next up, I have Pioneers by Queen Games. So this is another game that I think has flown somewhat under the radar. It's a game set in the Wild West, and you are trying to travel around this map, trying to pick up all these different pioneers, trying to fulfill contracts based on these stagecoaches. And the more you collect these pioneers, you're going to place your little pawns down and flip those over to get points. But I like the way that you traverse the map in this game, because as the game develops, you can end up laying more and more train tracks and travel from space to space. But the networks you build are important, not only because you can get points by building a huge networks, but because you can end up charging people for using your rail tracks. Because every section of track that you travel down that isn't your own, you're going to have to pay that player a coin, which is cool. I love that level of interaction and that network building. This game also has a nice use of engine building, as you have your player boards, and you can end up collecting tiles, which means you kind of end up getting more money each round, or you can end up getting more actions each round, which means you can lay more train track, and so on. So I like the way the components are used in this game. I think it looks quite nice quality, but I think ultimately it's quite generic, hence why it didn't catch people's imaginations. But I think it's a rock solid game, but ultimately it was a little bit too generic to keep me going back to play it again and again. I think I played this game a few times now, and I think I'm done with it. No real incentive to go back to it, but I think a bit underrated, and I think, again, a bit like Mammut, people could, if this was more publicity and more people were aware of it, then it could be a bit more successful than what it is. So that is Pioneers, a game that, again, nothing wrong with it, but nothing ultimately inspiring. And finally, for this section, I've got Sushi Go, or Sushi Go Party. This one is a card drafting game where you are collecting different types of sushi to score different points. So it's one of those games where you have a hand of cards, you're going to pick one of those cards and pass the rest next to your opponents, and so on, until you have a tableau of cards scoring points in lots of different ways. So one might say, score 3 points for each of this type of sushi, or if you collect 3 of these type of sushi, get X amount of points, or if you don't have the least amount of these type of sushi, then you don't have to suffer a certain point penalty. So all these different set collection methods and points, or ways of generating points based on the different types of cards you've got. But what I like about Sushi Go is the pure level of variability, because there are so many different types of sushi, and not all those sushi are used from game to game. You can kind of tailor the game to the type of game you want. You can have a very kind of mean and punishing interactive game, or you can have a real kind of laser cool kind of relaxed set collection style game, and you can really tinker that to what you want. And for a game with a pure one mechanism game, it works very well. Nice aesthetic to it, nice bright pieces, very inviting, and plays probably in about 20 minutes or so. Can't really fault it. Yes, it's probably a bit light for my tastes, but if somebody wants to play this and we have a higher player count, because I think it does accommodate quite a few players, then this is certainly one I wouldn't object to playing. Again, one of those games that I can't really fault, but just isn't quite my taste, because I like a little bit more to it. But again, more than pleasant. That is Sushi Go Party. So those are 10 games, family weight games that I've played. Nothing here that I've got a negative thought on. Probably the best amongst these are probably Sushi Go, Camel Up as well, and probably Takanoko. They're probably the best 3 I would put forward before the others. Carcassonne as well, obviously a classic. But Nothing here that gets my shoulder quality or anything, but still, all pleasant games to play and more suited to family groups. So if you have enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.